I don't think it's going to last very long. I yield the floor.
Madam President.
If the senator will hold his request.
Madam
The senator from Florida.
Madam President, I ask that consent that I may speak as if in morning business.
Without objection.
Madam President, I will speak on this resolution before us tomorrow, and matters about the budget deficit and how it ought to be solved, and it has to be solved. And I will reserve comments on that until tomorrow. In the meantime, what I wanted to point out to the Senate that we had a very significant benefit to not only the Florida citrus industry, but to the worldwide citrus industry, because there is a disease. It is a bacterial disease of all things. It's called citrus greening. Well, it's anything but that, because what it does, it kills a citrus tree within 5 years. And it has infected every grove in Florida. And when I say that the worldwide citrus industry is being threatened, I mean just that. This strain of bacteria came somewhere from Asia, has been imported not only into the United States, but in a lot of other countries that have moderate climates, warm climates, humid climates. There's another version that came from a different part of the world that is not as virulent. But what happens, this bacteria that has now been brought into this country, it's in Brazil as well, another major citrus-producing country, and it is carried by a little insect called a psyllid. And the little psyllid carrying this bacteria bites into the tree, the bacteria gets into the sap, and it will kill the tree in 5 years, and there is no known cure. Well, if it's going to kill a tree in 5 years, you can see the potential for the destruction of what we have come to take as standard fare, that we're going to have orange juice on our breakfast table. And that those who enjoy the mild elixirs and mix certain elixirs with orange juice, called maybe mimosas, whatever, that this is going to be a thing of the past if we don't get serious about finding a cure for this disease. Now, the reason that it is so extraordinarily lethal for the United States and for the state of Florida is the fact that since every grove has been affected, and since almost all of our orange juice that we consume in the domestic consumption of the United States, I say almost all, the biggest percentage comes from Florida, some of it, a little bit, from California, mostly the juice that's added to Florida juice comes from Brazil, but when there is a bumper crop in Florida, they don't have to ship it in refrigerated ships from Brazil. We're going to have a whole way of life, a whole tradition. We're going to have domestic consumption that is threatened if we don't come up with a cure. Now, the Florida citrus industry, to their credit, has been taxing themselves, the growers, to produce a stream of revenue that will allow them to continue the research to trying to find a cure. We've gotten some limited amount also from the U.S. Department of Agriculture, and supplementing all of that with back at the time when we could make a specific appropriations request, otherwise called an earmark. This senator certainly was asking for appropriations to help find a cure to this dreaded disease. But we haven't found the cure. And we have to have a stream of revenue to keep this going. So since it is so difficult to pass anything around here these days, even the Citrus Trust Fund that I have filed, that last year we had a whole bunch of co-sponsors, but this year, of course, we're all wound around the axle here on passing anything if it has to do with the budget. What I did was go to the U.S. Department of Agriculture, and I said, help. We have to have some help immediately. And fortunately, the administration, and I talked to the Chief of Staff of the White House about how dire this situation is. We can't wait. So they have just announced yesterday that they are releasing $2 million immediately that will go into the USDA research station at Fort Pierce, Florida, for the remainder of this fiscal year. And in the next fiscal year, assuming that the Competitive Grants Fund is funded by the U.S. Congress for the Department of Agriculture, which we have to assume that that program is going to continue, that the USDA has set aside an amount of $5 million in the next fiscal year, starting October the 1st, that will go directly into this research. And they have agreed to set aside in the following 2 years $2 million and $2 million in each of those years, so that we've got a steady stream of funding of $11 million for research specifically for citrus greening. Now, California may have this bacteria. If Texas doesn't have it, it's just a matter of days or months. And the same with the citrus that is grown in Arizona. And, of course, in a country like Brazil, which, to their credit, some of the citrus growers in Brazil have actually contributed money to our U.S. research institutions trying to find a cure, because Brazil's got the same problem. They've got it in a lot of their groves. The big difference between the Brazil citrus industry and the U.S. is that they have more land. So they can mow down and burn a citrus grove and go over and clear new land that's unaffected and go on and start a new grove. We don't have that luxury. We don't in any of our citrus growing states in the Sun Belt, and certainly we don't have that luxury in Florida to just go out and find new land to plant new citrus groves. So this is a very significant departure and a welcome new announcement by the U.S. Department of Agriculture that they will be sending $11 million over the next 3 years, specifically dedicated to finding a cure for citrus greening before it's too late. What citrus growers can do is that they can prolong the life of a tree, a grove, by doing certain spraying and so forth. But at the end of the day, the tree's going to die, and they're not going to produce any oranges for orange juice, no grapefruit for grapefruit that we enjoy. And just so the rest of the Senate will understand, this industry is part of us as Floridians. We have, even on our license tag in Florida, an orange. We have an industry that has been a mainstay of our economy for years and years. And of course, because of the forward-thinking Florida Citrus Commission in the late 40s, the 50s, and the 60s, they made orange juice to become a wanted and acceptable commodity on most every American breakfast table. And it's threatened. And it's up to us to do something about it. I was particularly thankful to the administration that they would come up with the $2 million immediately, because in addition to the growers taxing themselves on a per citrus box produced assessment, they were counting on the state of Florida to produce a $2 million appropriation to go into a $15 million research fund in this year, and lo and behold, the governor of Florida vetoed that in the appropriations bill. So the replacement of that vetoed item by the governor with this federal money from the USDA, considered an emergency allocation, it is welcome, it is timely, and it is much appreciated by all of the aficionados across America that enjoy orange juice as a staple in our diet. Madam President, I yield the floor, and I suggest the absence of a quorum.
Clerk will call the roll.
Mr. Akaka.
Senator from Florida.
Madam President, I ask consent to lift the quorum call.
Without objection.
Madam President, I understand I may be needed here for some administrative activities here in just a minute. So while I'm waiting on that, let me just say that with the last space shuttle launching on last Friday, and it was a beautiful, beautiful launch. And, of course, the expertise of the finest launch team anywhere in the world was very evident when they got down to T-minus 31 and they saw an indication on the controls that there had not been a retraction of one of the arms that's a servicing arm. But they were ready for that, and as it turned out, it was a faulty sensor. And, of course, the way they check, they've got cameras all over the launch tower. And so they turned the cameras on and trained it over there and saw that that arm, in fact, had retracted and pulled into its safe position. And so with only 53 seconds left in the launch window being that you had to launch the shuttle at that time so that it, once on orbit, could catch up with the space station, which was its destination. With 53 seconds to go, the count continued then, starting at T-minus 31, and went on down into a flawless launch, a flawless flight as they are now docked with the space station, and as they are now transferring this 20,000 pounds of cargo and equipment and supplies that will keep the International Space Station supplied for the next year. I don't think people realize how big the International Space Station is. Madam President, this thing is 120 yards long. If you sat on the 50-yard line of a football stadium and look from the end of one end zone all the way to the other end zone, that is how big the International Space Station is that we have built with another 15 national partners, and primarily our partner in building it, the Russians. And of course, you remember that the iteration before the International Space Station was originally the Soviet space station that became the Russian space station called Mir, of which we used to fly our astronauts with the space shuttle to the Russian space station. And so the Russians have been our partners. And remember, when we have been down, for example, after the destruction of the Space Shuttle Columbia in early 2003, for over 2 years, we would not fly the space shuttle as we went through and made the corrections that had caused the destruction of Columbia and the loss of 7 astronauts. And we relied on the Russians, on their Soyuz, to get us to and from the space station. Now, the sad thing is that the new rockets that we are building to go to and from the space station, there's one version of those rockets that in fact is going to fly later this year, rendezvous and dock with the space station and deliver cargo, but it has not been human rated. And to do that, you have to go through and put in all the redundancies for safety. You have to put in all the escape mechanisms on the capsule. And once that's done, this will be a rocket that will be much safer than the space shuttle. As a matter of fact, we can save the crew even from if they had an explosion on the pad. The crew can safely eject in the escape rocket with the capsule, parachuting to safety, all the way, 8.5 minutes to orbit if they had a malfunction. Contrast that with the space shuttle. When you saw Atlantis lift off, the first 2 minutes, there is no escape. You are married to those big solid rockets. And if there's a failure then, there is no way out for the crew. And as we saw, that was how Challenger 25 years ago was destroyed. They had a malfunction in one of the rockets. It caused the whole thing to explode. I'm talking about one of the solid rockets within the first 2 minutes of flight. Well, we're going to have a much safer way to get to and from the space station. The sad thing is, however, that the rocket for humans is not ready. And it's going to take about another 3 years. And therefore, it is sad that all of that finest launch team in the world at the Kennedy Space Center, a good part of them are having to be laid off. And that employment will ramp up over the next several years as we build and launch those kind of rockets. Now, there's another set of human-rated rockets. I'm just talking about the manned space program now. I'm not talking about the unmanned. Look what we're getting ready. This year, we're going to Jupiter. Later on, we are getting ready to launch a Volkswagen-sized rover that is going to go to the surface of Mars. And you know what those little rovers have done over the last number of years? I mean, they've gone like the Energizer Bunny all over the surface. This one is going to be the size of a Volkswagen. So we have these kind of missions that are going on, but the human space program, the next big one to get NASA out of Earth orbit, is the rocket that we're developing, a monster rocket. The capsule contract has already been let, and we are now going on the process of, pursuant to the NASA law that we passed last year, proceed with the design and the building of this rocket that will take us on the goal set by the President to Mars with interim stations along the way, and he has suggested an asteroid to rendezvous and land with an asteroid by 2025. Well, we have a vigorous space program going ahead. Senator Hutchinson, who has been just a wonderful partner in helping set NASA policy in all of this, and I are going to have something to say about this in the next few days because we think there is a holdup in the Office of Management and Budget with regard to the rocket design and the architecture for the big rocket. A delay that we are wondering why this delay keeps occurring. But we'll talk about that in a later session. So, Madam President, with that, I yield the floor, and I would ask if the ministerial administrative matter is ready. All right, Madam President, I would ask that a quorum call be initiated.
Clerk will call the roll.
Mr. Akaka.
The quorum call be listed.
Without objection.
I ask unanimous consent that S-869, the former Charleston Naval Base Land Exchange Act of 2011, be discharged from the Committee on Energy and Natural Resources and be referred to the Committee on Homeland Security and Governmental Affairs.
Without objection.
Madam President, I ask a unanimous consent that when the Senate completes its business today, it adjourn until 9:30 a.m. on Wednesday, July 13, that following the prayer and the pledge, the Journal of Proceedings be approved to date, the morning hour be deemed expired, and the time for the two leaders be reserved for their use later in the day.
Without objection.
That following, Madam President, I further ask unanimous consent that following any leader's remarks, the Senate resume consideration of S-1323, a bill to express the sense of the Senate on shared sacrifice in resolving the budget deficit, with 1 hour of debate equally divided and controlled between the two leaders or their designees prior to the cloture vote on S-1323. Further, that the filing deadline for all second-degree amendments on S-1323 be 10 a.m. Tomorrow. Madam President, there will be up to 2 roll call votes at approximately 10:30 tomorrow. The first vote will be on the motion to invoke cloture on S-1323, the sense of the Senate bill on shared sacrifice in resolving the budget deficit, and if cloture is not invoked, there will be a second cloture vote on the motion to proceed to H.R. 2055, the Military Construction, Veteran Affairs, and Related Agencies Appropriations Bill. Madam President, if there is no further business to come before the Senate, I ask that it adjourn under the previous order.
The Senate stands adjourned until 9:30 a.m. tomorrow morning.
The U.S. Senate has been debating a non-binding measure urging high-income earners to contribute more to deficit reduction. A vote is scheduled on Wednesday to limit